Hey guys, it's Kevin S. Review for the series finale of Mad Men, Season 7, Episode 14, Person to Person. And I really didn't know what was going to happen on this finale. I mean, I was really interested in seeing what was going to happen. Last week, they really gave us some big ideas of what was going to happen. Like, for example, I thought, Betty might die, or Dawn might face, his real identity finally. But none of that actually happened on this finale. I have to say, this was a perfect finale. Really, it really was perfect, and I pretty much loved everything that happened in this finale. The ending was pretty genius. Everyone was really put into where they should be, and everything in this episode was just amazing. I loved it. It perfectly shows us where everyone's going to be for the rest of their lives, and I definitely loved about the show, and I thought it was perfect. And we really came full circle with the show. And there wasn't anything that I felt weird, that was weird about it. There wasn't any, like, Dexter's either, where, like, someone became a lumberjack. There was nothing weird with that, which is great. And, I will say the Justified finale is still my favorite. I still love the Justified series finale more, but that's just because I've seen that show longer. This show was still great. It was having, it wasn't a perfect season, but these last 4 episodes have really been delivering, and this finale definitely was the best of the 4. So let's get in this episode because it was amazing. We begin in this desert with the race car speeding by, and Dawn's at the wheel. He pulls into a garage and gets out of the speed up Chevrolet, and the two grease monkeys chat with him, and he says with a shimmy they will create drag, and they tell him that he knows a lot about cars for a guy that doesn't have one, and they all pop beers, and I thought that was kind of a funny scene that we saw. So Roger's two secretaries go over his schedule. One says she's having Marie delivered to the hotel tomorrow, and Roger tells Allison he can't keep her on since it doesn't, and basically he fires he fires now I can remember her name. Uh what was her name? Dawn's secretary. He fires her right away, and I thought that was really interesting. He just fired her, and I love the line where he basically is just like Dawn. He's okay. At least I think he is. I thought that was really funny. But he knows it doesn't look like Dawn's coming back, but, she's basically, like, Meredith. He fires Meredith right on the spot, and basically, she's like, well, is he dead? And he's like, no, at least I don't think he is. I thought that was really funny when Roger said that, and, he just casually fires her, so Meredith's gone. Right there, Meredith's gone. I thought that was really interesting that he just fired her. So Lorraine runs this meeting, and after Peggy asks why she's off of an account, and she basically says it's because Stu took over for Pete, she really couldn't give two shits about it. Like, she's being really rude and unsympathetic, and she's not really giving Peggy the answer she wants to hear, and she's just being very rude, I have to say. Definitely she's being very rude to Peggy, and Peggy says you should go talk to David right now, which I was happy they showed Peggy back this episode, because a lot of people were like, oh, her storyline's closed. But they had to touch upon her story. They had to show what was going to happen with Peggy and Joan and all of them. They had to show that. So she says they should go talk to David right now to get him involved. Lorraine relents and says they can have the account, and basically that's what she plans on doing. So Dawn's in bed with this woman. We don't know who it is. She says she likes having a man to take care of. He asks if his wallet fell out of his jeans, and should he take a look. She take a look to see where he's from. He asks if she left him anything, and she asks if he never paid for it. And Dawn says he has and will, but likes it to be voluntary. And I thought we were gonna see Megan in this episode, but we actually don't. We see someone better in this episode because he tells her to get her purse. She doesn't, hands over an envelope of cash. She says she could have asked, but she says that never works. She asks about the ring, and he asks wasn't she gonna steal it. She thanks him for the cash, and he rolls back on top of her. So Joan and Richard are traveling, and she asks who gave him cocaine as a birthday present, and she agrees to try it with him, and he said he thinks you snip it off your fingernail. I thought it was really funny. They just casually try, and, like, they both don't really know how to try. I thought that was really funny. So she agrees to try it with him, and he says he thinks, basically, she tries, and then Richard sniffs off her nail. Joan says it feels like someone just gave her very good news, and Richard says they could live like this all the time, taking advantage of all they both have, and he says she should be spoiled, and Richard says Kevin will go to school soon, but says there are good schools everywhere, and Richard says they could get a place wherever she wanted, and he says he wants a future with, he says basically she wants a future with him. She asks if he wants to get married, and he says if she does, and she says she can turn her life into everything, and she asks they have to get married, and he says hell no, and then she jumps on him, and I thought they were really cute in that scene, definitely. You can tell that they're really cute in that scene. So Pete comes to see Peggy, of course. Pete is leaving Mccann. This is official, and I really like the scene because it shows how close Pete and Peggy have been over the years. Because, I mean, seasons ago, Peggy would be very cold to Pete and be like, I want nothing to do with you. But this really shows how close they've been and how far they've come. That's definitely something I loved about this whole episode in general. Is it just shows how all of the employees have come. And she says it's him and Harry for lunch. And he says someone gave him a cactus as a going away gift. And he doesn't even know what it has to do with him going away. And he offers it to her. And Harry shows up and Peggy says she can't go. And Harry asks if anything means anything to her, and Pete hands him the tin of cookies he was given, and Peggy reminds Pete they've never had lunch before, and then she says she's happy for him, and they all hate him for getting that big job. And he says to keep it up, but she's happy for him. She's the only one that's really happy for him. Everyone else doesn't want him to go. And she'll be a creative director in 1980 and says someday people will brag that they worked with her. And Pete says he'll be back and she better keep his cactus alive, and he goes. So I really like that scene because it really shows that he counts on her, make this really successful, make the company really successful. And I like that Pete is thinking that she could do it on her own. And you also see how close these two really were. It's a really sweet scene, especially since it's like the last scene we see of Pete in the episode. We do see one other scene. I thought it was really well done. So Sally talks to Don who says he's in Utah, and he talks about seeing them breaking the land speed record, and she says it sounds like he's having fun, and he asks what's wrong, and then asks if it's boy problems. She says she's not supposed to tell him, but he presses and says her mom is dying, and he's joking around. He thinks that she's kidding around, that she's a hypochondriac, but Sally says that no, this time it's serious. She has lung cancer. By the way, this whole episode, John Hands of Horns was amazing, but especially in this scene. This scene especially, this scene was amazing. I loved his performance in this scene. Because you see how much he cares for Betty. She talks about how she has 6 months to live, and she says Betty didn't want him to know, and Don says he's coming home immediately. He wants to help them out, and she says that's the one thing that Betty doesn't want. She wants G and Bobby to live with Uncle William, but he says they can all live with them. And Sally says they should be with Henry, but Don says grown-ups make these decisions, and Sally tells him to take her seriously, which I kind of like what she says. I mean, Sally really is taking over the family, and she says she has to go. Someone's waiting for her on the phone, and the phone rings, and Betty coughs and goes to get. Betty looks terrible in this episode. You can tell that she's dying. You can definitely tell. She has all these wrinkles on her face, and she's still smoking, regardless of, she shouldn't be. She knows she's dying, so she's not going to do anything differently. And you definitely see that she is dying in this episode, which was really sad to see. So, basically, it's a collect call from Don. She accepts a call. She tried to pretend things are normal. He says he talked to Sally. He says he's coming home, but he's like, you're definitely not. And I like that scene. I thought this scene was really sad. And he says the kids need him, but she says she doesn't want them upset and hasn't told the boys yet. And Don says the boys can come live with him. And she says to not let his pride interfere with his wishes. And he says he's their father, but Betty says they need a regular family, and living with their brother and Judy is in their best interest. And Betty says he can see them as much as he does know. And then she asks when was the last time he saw them, because he hasn't seen them in a while. And Don tells Betty he didn't know, and she says she appreciates his good intentions, but says she's not going to waste the rest of her time arguing about it. She knows she has already made her decision, and if she hadn't made it, maybe she would have thought about it. Also, because Dawn's just not really living the best life right now, I feel like she just wants someone that has their life, arranged. Like, Dawn doesn't really have his life figured out at this point. So she says she wants things to be as normal as possible, and him not being there as part of it. And Dawn is near tears and basically calls her Birdie. She's crying too. She says she knows. Betty says she has to go. Dawn sighs, says he'll talk to her soon. She hangs up and cries. Dawn hangs up and tries not to cry. It's an amazing scene, and I thought their performance in that scene was just amazing. So he goes back to drinking his beer. And we see Ken again, who we had to see Ken. Ken was always an essential part of the show, and he meets Joan for dinner and asks about Florida. And she says it was compelling, and basically he asks if she held onto her Rolodex. Now, of course, Ken's not working for them anymore. He's not working for Mccann. He didn't want to go. And he says she looks great. She asks what he wants, and he says every apartment at Dow has made an industrial film, and he fell asleep on the script, and he says the producer is drunk and asks if she knows who did Bird's Eye, and he hands her a check and says it's $50K for 8 minutes, and it says she can keep the difference. And Joan says for that kind of fee, it's no problem. He asks about her family, and she asks about Eddie. He says he's weird, and there may be something wrong with him, and I thought that was kind of funny what he said there. So Don's on his bed when the two young racing guys show up to ask him for money, and they remind him he promised to stake them. He's horribly drunk and says he does not have money. Just drop him in LA right there, and he staggers, and one sets him on the bed gently, and you can see that he's drunk, and basically, I'm just like, where is Don going with this? Like, what is Don actually doing here? So Peggy talks to Joan, who asks her to lunch to catch up, and she says she can't wait to and asks her to see her this weekend. Joan says she ran to Ken and says Dow needs an industrial script yesterday, and says they both thought of Peggy, which honestly, this would be a really good thing for Peggy, I have to say. But Peggy says she doesn't have time to moonlight, but Joan offers her $1,200, which is a lot of money back then, and basically Peggy agrees, and it seems like she's going to do that. So Don shows up at his niece Stephanie's house. He says Patty is mad he gave her money and he asks for a drink. And she offers coffee and asks what's going on. He says he's retired and on the road. And he says he wanted to check at her and see the little one. She says he lives with Ronnie's parents now. And she asks if they flew in to make her feel bad. And of course she knows who Don really is. She knows that he's dick and everything. And it was really good that he met up with her. I thought he was going to meet up with Megan, but he pretty much says that he and Megan are done at this point. So I thought that was really good. He had to meet up with Stephanie. He just had to. So he says Anna always wanted her to have it, but she asks what she'll do with it. He says sell it or do what she wants. She says she appreciates it, but it seems like he's the one that's in trouble. And he admits he has a lot has happened, which, yeah, a lot has happened. And Stephanie says he can crash there and says she's living for a few days to go up to the coast to a retreat. He says he just needs a shower and shave, but she says to take a nap on the couch while she opens a can of stew, and he stretches out, and basically Roger asks Marie if she's trying to kill him with sex, but she says she's trying to make him happy. He says French cigarettes taste like shit, and he says she's done with Canada, but she says he'll love it. She says her poor husband, Emily, suddenly decided he wants her, and Roger says he hopes she didn't get in bed with him when she wants to divorce him, because of course, now her and Roger are together. Roger wants to make sure that, they're not still together. So she's cursing him in French, and he says to yell at him in English, not French, and she says he will leave her with nothing but a little suitcase wandering around Manhattan. She tells him to go sleep on the sofa, and I really thought Roger and Marie were going to, basically break up here. I thought this was what was going to happen. So Stephanie wakes Dawn and says he's coming with her. The boys are trying to make some food when Sally shows up, and basically, I really like this scene. We really see how much of a motherly figure and how far Sally has come. That's definitely something I loved watching here. I mean, really, who would have thought that Sally would have taken over the family? But honestly, now it seems like the only possible option is for Sally to basically take on as the mother figure because Betty can't do it anymore. So she says she missed them. Tommy asks if it's going to happen, if it's going to happen now. They tell Gene to go watch TV because, of course, he doesn't know. And once he's gone, Tommy says that their mom is lying down and Henry's at work. And he says he heard it all before they stopped fighting. Sally says she doesn't know how long she has if she's not going to Madrid. And Tommy says he was trying to make dinner. And Sally says she'll show him how. And Tommy basically knows now. And I thought it was great to see Sally help him out with dinner. I thought that was a really great scene. I definitely really enjoyed that. Kieran Shipka as well also gave a great performance in this episode. She's a very good actress. So Dawn and Stephanie make it to this, basically, it's a hippie retreat, which is understandable because it's 1969. That's when those were around. And they're shown to this communal cabin. And Dawn asks where they are and look at the crazy schedule. And Stephanie says to be open and it might make him feel better. There's a guy snoring in one of the beds. They each take a bed, then Stephanie turns out the lantern and basically says goodnight to him. So Roger brings Kevin home, and he took him out for pancakes, and Roger asked to speak to Joan. And I love this scene because, of course, I wasn't sure if basically they were going to talk about Kevin, but we knew there had to be something between Roger and Joan, because we need to see if they still had feelings for each other, and they were still going to be together. I thought what was going to happen is that Joan was going to leave Richard, and Roger was going to leave Marie, and that Roger and Joan were going to end up together. That's what I thought was going to happen, that he still had feelings for Joan. But that's not what happens in the scene. She clicks the TV on so he can't hear, and Roger says he's revising his will and is dividing his estate between Elroy and Kevin. Because, of course, Kevin doesn't know that Roger is his father. Who doesn't know about that? So, and Joan doesn't want him to know that. So he says he doesn't want it to put her in an awkward position. She says the ex is no problem, and Richard is a man of the word. She says it's an expensive way to mark his territory. She asks if he's ill, and he says for now, but he's getting married, and basically He says he met her through Mccann and is her mother, and Joan laughs hard about it. She says that it's a spectacular mess. He says no one really cares, and he asks her to agree to take the money. She says if that's what he really wants, she won't say no, and will like knowing their beautiful little boy is taken care of. He doesn't really want to take care of him anymore, and basically he calls for Kevin, who ignores him, and Roger says Kevin really is a rich little bastard. Joan laughs and thanks him, and I like that Roger realized that he really isn't the right person to take care of Kevin, because all this time we've wondered, what is Roger going to do about Kevin, and now he basically is going to give Joan full custody, which I thought was really good that he did that, while Joan wants him to be in Kevin's life. That's not really what Roger wants, so I thought that was really good. So Stephanie drags Dawn to a session with her, and basically they walk around the room with basically no purpose. He says to basically the instructor saying to just move your legs. They walk silently. Stephanie's smiling and shrugs, and you start to see that this is kind of going to help out Dawn in a way. And I can see why she took Dawn too here, because this is going to help out Dawn. It's really going to calm him. He says to stop and look at the person nearest you. Dawn is near this old white-haired lady. He asks how that person makes you feel and to find a way to communicate that without words. And Dawn looks very uncomfortable here. The old lady shoves him. Dawn's taken aback by it, and Joan, I thought that was kind of funny that she just shoved him, because obviously he's just staring at her. What do you think's gonna happen, like, when you just stare at her? So Joan meets Peggy for lunch. They finally have that luncheon that they talked about. She hands over a check, and Joan orders them drinks, and Joan says that's the tip of the iceberg. She says she's producing 2 more industrials and says Ken is now in charge. And Peggy says he has a really demanding job, and Joan asks if she has a contract, and she says she wants to form her own production company, and she suggests Harris Olsen, and Peggy is stunned about this. And I was wondering if Peggy's actually going to do this with her. And Joan says they won't have to answer to anyone. It'll be theirs with their name on it. And Peggy says she's flattered, but then says she doesn't really know if she's going to be able to take it. And Joan asks why she's hesitating. Then she says she has to find a writer by the end of the week. And she says the partnership offer is just for Peggy. And I thought that was really interesting that she said that. And I was wondering if she was really going to take it. But then I thought, how's Stan going to feel about this? Because obviously, I was thinking, someone was going to have with her and Stan. I really wasn't sure what was going to happen there. But I wasn't really sure if Peggy was going to take this. I mean, she's been offered like 5 different offers. So I'm really confused as to what she was going to take. So Dawn sits another session in a circle. The group leader asks how Stephanie feels. And she says she feels like everyone is judging her. She says everyone thinks all she does is screw up, dropping out of school, getting pregnant, not being a good mother. One guy says life is full of shoulds, and Stephanie says she wants to get her life together. One woman asks if it's so she can be with her child, and Stephanie says no angrily. And the woman says she hears sadness from her about her baby. And she says her mother left, and her baby will spend his life staring at the door waiting for her to walk in. And Stephanie starts crying, runs out, and I love the scene. He glares at the woman, then goes out after Stephanie, catches up to her, says not to listen to them, and I really love this scene because he says he could help her, and he offers to move back to LA with her, which honestly I thought was going to happen. I thought he was going to help her raise her child, but Stephanie says he shows up with a family heirloom, but he's not her family. He can do whatever he wants, but he's not her family, and Dawn says he knows how people work. He says she can put it behind her, and it'll get easier as she moves forward, but she says she thinks he's wrong, then she leaves him to go lie down. And it really is true. I mean, Dawn abandoned basically his life as Dick years ago. He can't get that back. And I think Dawn is just realizing this now. I think Dawn's always wanted to have it both ways. He's always wanted to be Dawn and Dick, but he abandoned the life as, Dick. I don't know his last name, but he abandoned that life years ago, and he's just Don Draper now. So whatever he can do, Stephanie is not in his life anymore. It's really sad, but he needs to face that Stephanie's not really in his life anymore. So Peggy talks to Stan about Joan's offer. I was so happy she did this. This is such a funny scene. I loved it because she says she could be her own boss. And Stan says that's not a good reason. Says she is a rare talent. She asks if he thinks she'll fail. And the whole time, she's thinking he's criticizing her when really he's trying to motivate her. And Stan says she just wants to be in charge. She tells him he has no ambition. And he says he's happy being good at his job. And she says she's spoken like a failure. And Stan says he hopes she's drunk because she needs an excuse. He says there's more to life than work. He walks out upset, and it seemed like, someone was going to happen between them. It seemed like, he was trying to motivate her, but basically he does walk out. He's pretty upset about it. So, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff happening here. So, Stephanie comes back to the cabin late, and Joan calls for Richard and pours coffee, and Joan tells Richard she can't go with him today and says Nathan wants to show her around. She says it's a business meeting, and he asks, did she start a business? She says we'll see, then says it's just a couple of little projects. Richard asks doesn't she want to be with him? Because of course she agreed to maybe be with him and settle down with him. But Joan never is going to do this. I mean, Joan's always been about business, business, business. That's always been Joan. She's always been concerned about her job, and she'll always be concerned about her job. She doesn't have time for love. That's the thing about Joan, and this is a very sad scene, but it's very fitting for Joan. I can understand why Joan did what she did here, because Richard says he's done this and says he wants to be with her, but will be rooting for her to fail so he can have her time. He really wants to be with her, but he knows that if she has her own business, he can't be with her because it's just going to distract her. And he says he doesn't want to be back where he was, but she says she wants him in her life and says it can't be it can be different. And her phone rings and she says she should answer it. He says it isn't happening to her. She's making a choice, and Joan says she can't turn off that part of herself. I mean, she wouldn't make him choose. She's not going to make him choose between her and her job. And Richard says when something's wrong, it's always wrong. She goes to get her phone. Richard goes to leave. She says he's being silly. He wished her luck, walks out the door, and basically her life. And she's devastated. But I like this. But she brushed it off very quickly, just like Joan would. Takes a call from Jeff, and she very quickly brushed it off. She's just like, you know what, whatever. I don't need him in my life. And that's just such a typical thing for Joan to do. I'm not surprised that Joan just is like, see ya. I'm not surprised she did that, because that's just something that Joan would do, obviously. Joan would always do something like that. She's always been concerned about her job over her love life, and that's always how Joan's going to be. So Dawn wakes the next morning and sees Stephanie isn't there. She left him, which I can understand why. She needs to make it known that he's not in her life, and he goes looking for him. One of the guys says she took him a few hours ago, but he doesn't know where exactly she went, and Dawn goes to the front desk and asks how he gets out of there, and she says it'll be a couple of days to get a car. Dawn curses. He really wants to get out of there and says he can get a ride back with someone by the end of the work. And Dawn says people come and go and no one says goodbye. She thinks he's talking about the retreat and says people are free to do as they please. And Dawn calls Peggy, and I was surprised, and I like that he called Peggy because they've always had that friendship, and they need to show that in this episode, because he calls Peggy collect, and she asks where the hell he is, because obviously no one knows where he's been. He's just been gone, and says everyone's furious at him. Peggy says he can come home, but he asks where. She says Mccann will take him back in a second and asks, doesn't he want to work on coke? And Dawn says he can't. He says he can't get out of there, and Peggy tells him to come home. He says he messed everything up, and so he's not the man she thinks he is. And, of course, she doesn't know about the whole Dick situation, so I thought he was going to legitimately tell her in the scene. Peggy tells him to listen and asks what he did that was so bad, and he says he broke all his vows, scandalized his child, took another man's name, made nothing of it, and she says it's not true, but Dawn says he only called because he never realized he never said goodbye to her, and Peggy says he shouldn't be alone right now. He says he's in a crowd and just wanted to hear her voice. He ends the call, tries to stop crying, and he knows he's probably never going to talk to her again. I thought that was really sad. And you really start to see he sits down on the ground, breathing hard like he's having a panic attack, which he basically is having a panic attack at this point. This was really big. It was really sad to see, I have to say. So Peggy calls Stan, says Don just called. He asks where the hell he is. And basically, she says California, but he didn't say where. And she's really worried. Stan says he always does this and always comes back and will be fine. And Peggy says he wasn't making any sense. Stan says to let Dawn go. By far one of my favorite scenes of the episode. I love this scene, and you guys will know why. He says it doesn't mean she doesn't care about him. Peggy apologized for what she said, and he says she'll be great no matter what she does. Peggy says she's going to stay, and he says he didn't want her to leave. She asks why he didn't say that, and he says because he always wanted to strangle her in person, then misses her and calls. He says he brings out the worst in her when he stands in front of her. He says she drove him crazy, and once she came into his life, and now he wants to be with her. And Peggy's like, what? I thought that was hilarious, where he's like, I want to be with you. And Stan says again, I want to be with you. He tells her he's in love with her. She says, what? I love it. She's just like, what? Can you say that again? Because she doesn't believe that he's serious here. She can't believe that he's saying these words. And he says he loves her. And Peggy's stunned. She says that's what she thought he said. And she says she doesn't know what to say. She says she can't breathe. She says she doesn't even think about him then. Says she does all the time because he's there and here. She says he makes everything okay no matter what. And he always has really really been there for her. All season long, he's been there for her. And I love that they basically decided to get together. That was the one thing I wanted in this finale, was for Peggy and Stan to get together. And Peggy says she must be because he's always right. She cries a little, says she thinks she's in love with him too. And it's there's no one on the other line. Like, it's like, why isn't he listening to her? He literally runs to her office, and he asks what she was saying. She says she loves him. He smiles, she hangs up the phone, she goes to him and kisses her, and he kisses her. It's such a beautiful scene, and I love that they finally got them together, because honestly, Stan is great for Peggy. Great for her. It's great that Peggy has Stan in her life. She really deserves someone like Peggy, and I thought that was, I mean, you know, she really deserves someone like Stan, and I thought I was very happy that Peggy and Stan finally ended up together after a season where I've wanted them together all season. I thought that was very good they ended up together. Perfect for Peggy. So, you know, while Joan can't really handle a man, Peggy can, because Peggy's always been a lot more sympathetic about those things. She's not going to take this business. She's going to take Stan over this business, but that's what she wants, honestly. Everything the characters do in this episode are things that they want, and I think that's great. So Don sits still on the ground when a woman finds him and asks if he's waiting for a phone call, and he says what, and she asks if he took something, and she asks him to come to her seminar with her, but he says he can't move. He is at the point where he really doesn't know what to do with his life, and she says she's late, doesn't want to walk by herself. She holds out her hand, he goes with her, and they go into the session and sit down. And Dawn sits looking pretty shell-shocked, and I loved this scene. This scene was amazing, and John Hamm's performance in this scene was just perfect. Because this guy named Leonard speaks, says nothing is complicated about him, and he's not happy, and he says he's never been interesting to anyone. He says he works in an office, people walk right by, they don't see him. He says he goes home, watches his wife and kids who don't look at him when he sits down. He says it's like no one cares that he's gone, and basically, it's a really devastating scene. He says they should love him, and maybe they do, but he doesn't even know what it is. And this is pretty much how Don feels about himself right now, really. It's very much how he feels about himself. And he says he had this dream. He was on the refrigerator shelf, and the door closed, the light goes out, he knows they're eating. He says the door opens, they smile, but they don't look right at you, maybe don't pick you. He says then the door closes again, the light goes off, and he smiles nervously, and he starts crying, and everyone else is looking at him like, what the hell are you doing? But Don stands, he basically sympathizes with him. Everyone in the group stares, he kneels down, he hugs him, and he starts crying too, because he can relate to this guy's struggle. He can relate to what he's struggling for, and I thought that was amazing that Don hugged him. I was so happy that that happened. I was close to crying in this scene, really I was. I was close to tears. This scene was amazing, and John Hamm just gave such a beautiful performance in that scene. And then we see this great montage basically showing us where everyone is going to be now, because Peggy, Tree, and their daughter leave for Kansas, while Joan has started her own business, and it's called, I love what it's called too. It's called Holiday Harris, which perfectly suits her. And you see that she's now started her own business without Peggy. Roger's in Canada with Marie, ordering champagne in broken French, which I love that he's just in broken French. I thought that was really funny. So they end up together. Betty is still smoking while Sally does the dishes. She knows she's gonna die, but Sally is gonna take over, which is great. Peggy is typing on a script when Stan comes to give her a kiss, so they're together, and they're in her place, and it really shows where everyone that we care about is going to be. In just those few seconds, we see where everyone's going to be, and I thought that was great they did that. So, Don's by the ocean looking at the water. He's still at the retreat, and then is doing these sun salutations with the group about finding a new you. And he chants with the others, then offers a small smile to the world. And then we see, I love the way they end this. This honestly was a genius ending. Because I didn't realize something about this. We see this iconic Coke commercial called, I'd like to teach the world to sing. If you guys don't know, Mccann actually made that commercial. Mccann made that commercial. So I think what happened is that Don got the idea for the pitch in his head after Don is finally at peace, which is so good. I think Don finally went back to Mccann and he pitched them this ad. Even if they weren't going to listen to him, he did it anyway, and that's how they made this ad. Because the only person I think would make an ad like this is Don. And I think, honestly, that Mccann, we know they made this pitch in real life. Mccann is still around today. I looked up their company. They're still around today, which is awesome. So I think Don pitched this, and that is what calmed him. That is what finally brought him to the peace he's always wanted to be in, and I thought that was awesome. So overall, guys, this was a very satisfying finale. I mean, here's where we left off. Don's back at Mccann where he wants to. I'm pretty sure Don went back to Mccann, and now he's going to work on Coke, and he's going to become the most successful of all of them. I really do. I mean, this is one of the most successful ad campaigns of all time. Who doesn't know I'd like to teach the world to sing? Who doesn't know that? Everyone knows that tune. So it became one of the most iconic commercials of all time, and I think Don really is the only person that could do that. I mean, think about Don's pitches. He's always been so enthusiastic about it, and those men in the room that he walked out of, they were more just about ideas, while Don was always more about presenting things, and they didn't really, he was all about the PowerPoints and things like that, and, not really PowerPoints, but you know what I mean, he was always about the, like, showing things, and, like, sketching things out. He was always about that, and I think Don pitched this, and that's what made him successful. So Don's back in Mccann, Peggy's with Stan, Pete, Trudy, and their daughter are in Kansas. Joan has started her own business. Roger's with Marie. Betty is slowly dying, but Sally is taking over and basically becoming the mother figure. Everyone's pretty much where they need to be, and I thought that was awesome that they ended that way. Nothing felt weird. Everything felt really perfect. It was the perfect ending to a near-perfect season. There have been a few mishaps this season, a few episodes that honestly were a little bit boring, but these final 4 episodes have really, really been delivering. They've been amazing to watch. I've loved every minute of this episode was fantastic. Everything in this episode was amazing. What did you guys think of this episode? Do you think that Don finally found peace? I think he did. I think he pitched this ad. I think that's really what happened. I think they had to show this at some point, because where we were, I mean, that's what Mccann would have done. Obviously, Peggy was talking about Coke, so Don probably went back, finally found peace, and once he could finally concentrate when he was meditating, he found this ad, went back, and pitched it, and I really think that's what happened there. But that's basically my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Oh my god, guys. This has been such an amazing season. And I'm very happy that I watched this show. I really am. Because there were points where I'm like, why am I still watching this show? This show's boring. Because I'm not going to be honest. I'm going to be honest. The show bored me at times. It really did. Like the first 3 episodes of the season were kind of boring. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys about that. But these last 4 episodes, this is why I love this show. I think they've really been delivering. The performances were great. Where everyone ended up was great. I'm very happy that they ended the show the way they did. And it wasn't a sad ending. It was pretty much just what everybody got, what they wanted, what they've always wanted. I mean, Joan finally is able to be taken seriously as a woman. That's something she's always wanted. Peggy's now with Stan, and she's realized she can have this relationship with Stan. She's always wanted to be with him. Roger's with Marie. That's what he wanted. Don has finally found peace, what he's always wanted. Betty's dying, but Sally's helping her. That's what she's probably wanted. She wants Sally to take over. I'm pretty sure that's what Betty would have wanted Sally to do. Pete and Trudy, they're back together. Now they're going back to Kansas. Everyone's really where they need to be. I thought that was awesome. I love about this episode, and it was an amazing finale, and I absolutely loved it. But that's basically my review. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of this finale. Was it satisfying for you? What did you think of the season overall? Because I want to know what you guys thought of this final season. Was it a good final season? I thought this was an amazing final season, I have to say. Not as good as Justified's final season, but definitely a really good final season. Definitely better than Sons of Anarchy's 7th season. Definitely better than that. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for Penny Dreadful. And I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.